Welcome back everyone. In this video we'll be showing you how to change the front and rear deck covers on the Apollo City. The tools we need for this job are flush cutters, adjustable pliers, some zip ties, an X-Acto knife, Phillips head screwdriver, a terminal extractor, 2.5mm Allen key, a hot glue gun, and a battery drill with a 2.5mm bit. Now the first thing we'll need to do is remove the grip tape. When these get old, they tend to stick to the deck and rip when we remove them. So we'll try to not rip them, but if that happens, we'll need to take a new one and reinstall it at the end. So usually when removing the grip tape on the Apollo City, we can start from the back and apply even pressure to not rip the grip tape like these. These can happen very often, and that's why we need to be careful. We can just take an X-Acto knife and try and peel it to cause the least damage possible. And that should do it. We'll be careful here. And the same thing for the front. This part can be quite delicate, so we're going to take our time. And there we go. We can put that to the side for now. We can now just take shop towel or paper towel and remove the excess dust to get the least of it possible in our deck. Now to remove the deck screws, we'll be using a 2.5mm Allen key and our drill with a 2.5mm bit. All we need to do is start loosening our screws just to not strip them with the drill. Now obviously the one between the folding mech can be accessed properly with a drill, so we'll do it with our Allen key. That's our first screw. Then we can take our drill and get the rest out. We can now take an X-Acto knife and lift the back of the deck, just like that. And it should come out like this. We can also remove the gasket for now. Make sure to not lose this or rip it, as this is very important to keep water out of the deck. The next thing we'll need to do is remove our front cover. So we'll need to remove the 2 screws right here, the 2 on the other side, and the 2 more at the bottom. For that we'll use a Phillips screwdriver. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 2 bottom ones now. Now notice these ones are silver, so we can code them by color and make sure we put the 2 silver ones back at the bottom. We can now proceed to removing our front tray, just like that. Now to completely remove the front cover, we'll need to take out a brake line. So we'll just unscrew our knob right here. We can now pull our brake line out of the guide pin, just like that. We can then remove the spring and pull our brake line all the way out. We can now finish pulling the brake line from the deck. Make sure to not catch any cables on the way out. And just like that, our deck cover is free. We can now take our new deck cover and feed our brake line through the hole. Just like this. And we can now feed our brake line back through the deck and out the back. We can now finish feeding our brake line to the back and reinstall it on the drum brake. So we can firstly put our spring back on, then reinsert the brake line into the bracket. We can then insert it into our guide pin. and then screw our knob back on. Perfect. Always remember to check the brakes to make sure they're properly adjusted after removing the brake line. Now before we remove the tray, we're first going to need to remove the battery. So for that, we're going to first unplug our power cables, safety first, and we can also unplug the charging port cable just to get it out of the way. We can then remove the battery and put it to the side for now. Now after we've removed the battery, we can dislodge the controller to make space for the cables and remove all the cables from the side of the deck. Just like that. This will allow us to better identify the light cable from the rear tray. So let's move to the back and unscrew that one. To unscrew the rear tray, we'll just need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the two top screws and the one screw at the bottom. That is one. That is two. And let's go to the bottom to remove the last one. Just like that. Now that the screws are removed, we can pull off our cover, just like this. And we now need to trace our light cable from the back to the light box. Now to have enough workspace in here, we're going to pull our charging port cable out, just like that. Now that we have our first connector out, we can pull the second one just to make even more space. There we go. And then our last one right here. With those cable out, we can now identify our light cable right here in the middle, and we can now trace it to our light box. Now that we've liberated the other side, we're going to pull out the cables from this side here just to liberate a little bit more space. This will be our motor cables. We can now pull the light box out from the inside of the deck. We can also pull the motor connector cables to make a little bit more space, just like that, so we can have access to light cables. And there we go. We can now gently tug on the light to see which cable moves. As we can see, it is this one, so we can liberate the connector by cutting the cable tie and disconnecting the two wires, as we can see. We can now pull our light cable out gently to not break it, and we will fish it out from the back. We can keep gently pulling to have the connector come out, just like this, and then we can pull from the end to take it out. Now that we've cleared our connector from the deck, we can just pull our wire out, and there we go. Now that we have our new cover, we can rewire the light through our deck and reconnect it up front. Now a quick tip to fish the new line through the deck. I just took an old piece of wire, you can use wire or rope or anything, and we're going to tape it together so it's easier to get out on the other side. That should do. Then we're going to pull from the front and gently get it through our deck. Now that we have the wire back through the deck, we can reinstall our cover onto our scooter. We want to make sure to get our brake line in the slot right here and just slide the cover back on just like that. We can now screw the cover back on and we'll go up front and finish the wiring. That is 1, 2, just like that. Now that this is all fastened, we can go up front and deal with the wiring. We can now use the same wire still taped to fish our connector through our deck onto the other side to reconnect it. We're going to first pass it over our wires just here. I'm now going to go on the other side to push it through the hole right there. We can now push up all of our wires, pass our fishing wire right here, and gently pull our light through the deck. And there we go. We can just pull to remove all the excess cable from the other side, and we can now remove our tape. We can then take our 2 connectors and plug them in, just like that. We can now take our zip tie, for the zip tie, we want to pass it in between the connector wires to hold it in place. That should do it. We can cut off the loose end, just like that. And we can put it into the deck with the others. That should be good. We can now go on the other side and pass our connector wires back through. Now the 2 wire connectors we had right here, we want to pass back through the hole to put them back in the chamber. That's 1. And our second one right here. We can now pass our charging port connector back inside. There we go. As we can see, it's back in place. Now that all of our wires are where they should be, we can put our controller back in its spot. We just have to gently push it. And just like that, we have space for our battery. We can now take our battery and reinsert it into the deck. We want to make sure every wire is out of the way, and it should gently push into place just like that. We can now reconnect our charging port. Now that it is reconnected, we can put our wire down into the deck and flatten it out on top of our controller, just like that. We can now reconnect our power cable, same concept, positive on top, negative on bottom. It is normal to spark like this when we reconnect it. We can do the same thing by putting the wire back into its spot, just like this. Now before we put the deck plate back on, we're going to put the wires back into their spot and reinstall the deck cover. Just like it was when we opened it, we can slide this back into their spot. That's perfect. We can now take the front cover and put it back in place. Just like that. We can now start by inserting the 2 bottom screws. There we go. Let's go up top and screw the others in. That is 1, 2, 3, and our final one. With our front cover back on, let's move on to the next step. Now before we put the deck plate back on, we want to make sure to have our rubber gasket back onto the scooter. Then we can take our deck plate and reinsert it onto the deck. We can now take our deck screws and screw them back in. And for the last one, we're going to use a key, as we can't access it directly from the top. We can now pass back around with our key and make sure all of our screws are tightened properly. Now that our deck plate is reinstalled, we can apply the grip tape and we will have completed the repair. Now to apply our new grip tape, we will take off the film in the back with our X-Acto knife. Make sure there are no air bubbles in the grip tape. And that should do it. And that's how you change the rear LEDs on the Apollo City.